Hello everyone, my name is Tiga. Welcome to Girls with Standards YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about sex. We started the sex series 2 weeks ago, and last week we talked about strategies for abstaining from premarital sex. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about strategies for having more sex in marriage. The world says have an open marriage, but what do we say here at Girls with Standards? Let's find out. Okay, before we begin, let's define what a marriage is. A marriage is a union between a man and a woman in holy matrimony. An open marriage is a union between partners who have decided that they would allow other people into their marriage or have sex with other people who they are not married to. For me, this implies discontentment. And honestly, the moment you get married, that's when your eyes will open to see that there are people out there who are more beautiful, who are more handsome, who are more wealthy, who are more intelligent than your spouse. But the key to enjoying marriage and the key to staying married is contentment. You have to be contented with who you've chosen to marry. You have to be satisfied with who you've decided to spend the rest of your life with. Marriage is a commitment. Marriage is for life. It's not something that you do for 2 years, for 3 years, for 10 years, which is why I encourage single people to be careful about who they choose to marry, to take their time to pray and to seek God's face and to ask questions and to dig in and before they marry someone, because once you get married to the person, that's it. You have to stay married to them and make it work. So contentment is key. Once you get married to someone, you have to find a way to be content with who you've chosen to get married to. So the idea of an open marriage just spells discontentment to me. It means that you still think that there are people out there who are better than your spouse. You still think that you're missing out on something out there. You still think that you can have the commitment of marriage but still go around and sleep with other people. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. And you might as well not be married, because the marriage is a union between one man and one woman, and the purpose of marriage is for you both to stay together, to bond, to enjoy each other for the rest of your lives. So inviting other people into your marriage is just not the plan that God had. And like I've said in our previous videos, that whatever God creates, the world always finds a way to pervert it, and marriage is no exception. God created marriage to be a union between a man and a woman with no other people involved, but the world has turned it upside down and said it's okay, you can get married, but then you can invite other people into your marriage. That's not right. It might seem right, but it's not right. The Bible says in Hebrews 13:4 that marriage is honorable in all, the marriage bed not defiled, but adulterers and fornicators God will judge. So even though you and your spouse are comfortable with the idea of having other people into your marriage and not consider it infidelity, the truth is it's still infidelity, because you're not married to those people. You're married to your spouse, and you have to be faithful to your spouse. You have to satisfy your spouse. You have to long for just your spouse. You have to have sex with just your spouse. Having sex with other people is considered adultery or fornication. And so I want to encourage you that, when you get married, I want to encourage you, if you're married, to just focus on your spouse, build your spouse up, work on your marriage. If you're having issues, seek help and resolve the issues that you're having, just so you can have a beautiful marriage. Marriage is a beautiful thing, but it requires work. It requires a lot of work. And the thing is that some of us are not ready to put in the work. Some of us are not ready to put in the work. We just give up and, look for easy way outs. But today I want to encourage you, work on your marriage, water your garden, and enjoy the fruits of your labor. All right, so let's talk about sex in marriage, right? Sex in marriage. Like I said before in my previous episode, before you get married is not the time to have sex. When you get married is when you need to start having sex. But unfortunately, most people have all the sex that they need to have before they get married. And when they get to married, it's like they're gassed out. They don't have the energy, they don't have the desire, they don't have the drive for sex. But this should not be. Marriage is where you should have all the sex that you can ever have. And I've realized that there are some issues, or there are some situations that cause people not to have sex or adequate sex in marriage. And sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes it's just situational. Sometimes it's just circumstances, right? But that's also not an excuse, because marriage is a form of bonding between you and your spouse. The more sex is a form of bonding between you and your spouse. The more you have sex with your spouse, the more closely knit you are together with each other. And I said in the last episode that sex is cleaving with someone. It means your soul and the person you're having sex with cleave together. And so that's why it's really important to have sex only in marriage, because when you have sex, your soul is cleaving to someone, and you don't want your soul to cleave to other people. You want your soul to cleave to your spouse and your spouse alone, because you guys are becoming one. You become one in marriage, right? And so sex is really, really important. It's like a glue that bonds a wife and a husband together. So the more you have sex, the more bonded you are, the more glued together you are. The less you have sex, the more fights you have, the more separated you have, the more you start to look elsewhere or start to desire other things. So my job today is really to encourage married people to have more sex. God made sex for us. God makes sex for us to enjoy. God gave this to us as a gift. So we have to maximize it. We have to use it to the best of our abilities. We can't let people who are not married have more sex than we who are married. So married folks, I'm challenging you, please have more sex. Okay, and I want to talk about some of the strategies that you can employ to have more sex in your marriage, to make your marriage bed lively and fun. And the first step is acknowledge where you are, right? Acknowledge where you are. If you are in a phase or in life where you're not having as much sex as you should have, acknowledge it. Realize that the first step is to tell yourself the truth and have an honest evaluation of where you are. Where am I in my sex life, in our sex life? Where are we in our sex life? Have an honest conversation about it. And then once you determine where you are, if your sex life is great, fine, keep it great. Develop strategies to keep it going. If your sex life is not great, then figure out ways to make it better, right? But be honest with yourselves. Be honest with yourselves. And one of the strategies that I would like to share is prioritize sex and intimacy with your spouse. I cannot overemphasize this enough, because I know that once people get married, the first 1 or 2 years, is exciting. People are having a lot of sex because, it's just you and your spouse. For some people have sex, 9 months after they get married. Some people wait a couple years before they have children. So for most people, the first 2 years or the first 3 years are usually the years where, sex is a lot, the marriage bed is hot and on fire. And then after like a couple years, things tend to start to die down and dwindle. And sometimes it's mostly because there's more going on in your life. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have job responsibilities, or maybe you just don't really you're taking your spouse for granted. You're not acknowledging them the way you used to acknowledge them when you were newly married. So these are some of the things that could cause sex to kind of dip in marriage. But I want you guys to prioritize sex again. Make it a priority. Make it a priority. And one of the things that I've been talking about, or I've been thinking about, is just if you have to make a schedule. I know this is kind of weird, but for some people it's really bad where they don't have sex at all. So if you have to make a schedule and say, okay, every week we're gonna have, you know, sex on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday, Saturday, or, you know, Wednesday, Friday, and things like that, just to make sure that you guys are being intentional about having sex. Because with how busy life is, with how busy life can get, you can easily put sex on the back burner, and it shouldn't be. So I think making it a priority is key, and that involves planning. Especially when you have kids, when you have responsibilities. You have to plan when you're going to spend time with your spouse. You have to plan when you're going to have sex with your spouse. So I say one of my advice to you is, you know, weekly, you know, have a weekly meeting with your spouse and decide on the days that you guys are going to have intimacy with each other. And those days that you choose, make sure that make sure you choose days that are not busy. Make sure you choose days that, you know, you have less on your plate, just so that, you know, you can prepare for your spouse, you're not tired when they come home, and things like that. So yeah, so the first strategy is prioritize sex. The second strategy is schedule, make time for sex. If you have to schedule sex, but that doesn't mean that you can't be spontaneous. That doesn't mean that you can't, you know, just because you said you're going to have sex on Wednesday and Saturday, it doesn't mean that, you know, if Tuesday there's a small window for you guys to get together, that you don't have sex. You can still be spontaneous, but I think being consistent, I think having a set time to have sex is key as well. Another thing I would like to encourage you guys to do more is talking about sex. You know, especially as Christians, I feel like sometimes we talk about not having sex before we get married, and then when we get married, it's like the whole mentality of not talking about sex or not engaging in sex translates into marriage. But we need to change that. We need to be able to talk about sex openly with our partners. We need to be able to tell them the things that excites us. We need to be able to share the things that we like. We need to be open and just be naked in front of them and not be ashamed. That's the whole point of marriage, right? Being naked and unashamed. So talk to your spouse about sex. Talk to them about the things that excite you. Talk to them about the things you like about their bodies, you know, all those things. And then also another tip that I would like to give is explore each other, explore different styles, explore different positions, explore different things with your spouse. Don't do the same thing over and over again. Don't, you know, try something different. You know, whenever you guys travel, try to explore, try to have sex in different places, you know, so keep things exciting, keep things, you know, fun. Another tip is seduce your spouse. Do things that, you know, that seduce them when they come home from work. Do things that excite them. Walk around naked, you know, and things like that. Be attractive, smell nice, look good. Just do things that that would attract your spouse and that would, you know, cause them to pay attention to you. And it's interesting because the world, they know how to do these things. You don't have to teach them. They know how to get someone. They know how to get a man. They know how to get a woman, you know. So we the body of Christ, we need to also adapt strategies, because listen, God made sex for us. God made marriage for us. So we have to enjoy it. We have to enjoy it, and we need wisdom. We need wisdom to be able to do that. And so, yeah, seduce your spouse. Do things that, you know, will cause him to salivate or her to salivate, you know, and just explore. Just be fun. Have fun with each other. The last but not least tip that I'm going to give you is ask God for help. Without God, we can do nothing, but with God, all things are possible. There's no situation, there's no issue that God cannot solve. If you feel like, oh my gosh, my marriage, sex in our marriage is like, we've not had sex in a year. In fact, I don't even know if we can rekindle our sex lives. With God, nothing is impossible. And if you are in a place where, you know, you feel like your sex life is okay, you still need God. There's more to explore. There's more to explore. You can never exhaust you can never exhaust sex. There's always something new. There's always something to learn. So ask God for help. Involve God in your marriage. The Bible says that a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Let God be the third cord in your marriage. Don't just do marriage by yourselves. Do marriage with God in it, because he's going to help you. He invented marriage, he invented sex. So if there's anything that you're struggling with, if there's anything that you need help with, the best person to go to is the source, the manufacturer, right? So go to God, ask him for help and say, God, we're struggling. This sex, it's not, we're trying to make it happen, it's not happening. Give us wisdom, on how to rekindle our sex lives. You can go to God, he will help you. Approach him, he will help you. Be honest, come together as a couple and say, hey, we're struggling in this area, and go to God for help, and he's going to help you. So those are the few tips that I have for you all, my married folks, today. Please try to implement them. I'm also going to implement them as well, because nobody is perfect. We're all learning and we're all striving to have, a beautiful and perfect marriage. So I'm also going to implement some of these strategies, because I'm sharing things that I've learned in my marriage journey with you guys as well. So that's all for today. I hope you guys were blessed. I hope that this was a helpful series talking about sex before marriage and in marriage. It's an exhaustive topic, and it's going to take us forever to talk about all the things involved in marriage and as a single person, but I felt like these 3 episodes were enough quick coverage of sex before marriage and in marriage. And so that's all for today, ladies. Thank you again for joining us in today's episode. It's always a pleasure to hang with you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. And until then, God bless you. God bless you real good. Take care, and bye-bye.